Hello guys, my name is Tyler from Tyler's Tech World, and today we are going to explore the history of Apple Computer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this pilot episode of Computing History. Apple Computer was founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne on April 1st, 1976, making the company 42 years old as of April 1st, 2018. The history of everyone's favorite tech startup consists of one garage, 3 friends, and very humble beginnings. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The two Steves, Jobs and Wozniak, may have been Apple's most visible founders, but were it not for their friend Ronald Wayne, there might be no iPhone, iPad, or iMac today. Jobs convinced Ronald to take 10% of the company's stock and act as an attributor should he and Woz come to blows. But Wayne backed out 12 days later, selling for just $500, a holding that would have been worth $72 billion 40 years later. Jobs and Woz went to a homebrew computer club to pitch the Apple I to potential investors, and there Jobs met Paul Terrell, who owned the Bite Shop in Mountain View, California. Jobs struck a deal with Terrell to supply his store with 50 computers at $500 each. The deadline to get these computers done was extremely tight because each computer was built by Woz with his own hands. Jobs was the deal maker, and Woz was the engineer. Once the store had taken its cut, the Apple I sold for $666.66. The Apple I had no case, keyboard, or power supply. They would have to be bought separately, or if you wanted, you could get it fully built in a wooden case with everything you needed to get it going. The Apple I stayed in production from April 1976 until September of 1977, with a total run of around 200 units. The rarity of the Apple I has made it a collector's item, and a working Apple I was auctioned off in 2014 for $905,000. The two Steves were looking for funding so they could make the Apple II. One day, they met a man named Mike Markkula who invested $250,000 and his expertise in the marketing field to the boys. They were set for the Apple II. The original Apple II debuted at the West Coast Computer Fair on April of 1977, going head-to-head with big-name rivals like the Commodore PET. It was a truly groundbreaking machine with color graphics and tape-based storage, which was later upgraded to 5.25-inch floppies. The image it sent to the NTSC display stretched to a truly impressive 280 by 192 resolution, a total of 53,760 pixels, which was then considered a high resolution. In comparison, the new iMac Pro has a resolution of 5120 by 2880, a total of 14,745,600 pixels, which is an increase of about 27,328% in the number of pixels on the screen. Now, the Apple II wasn't just one computer. It was an entire line of computers that ran all the way until 1993. So I'm going to quickly run down most of the models that were released of the Apple II. The Apple II, released in 1977. The Apple II Plus, released in 1979. The Apple II Bell & Howell Edition, released in 1979. The Apple IIe, released in 1983. The Apple IIc, released in 1984. The Apple IIe Enhanced, and yes, that does stand for Apple II Enhanced, released in 1985. The Apple IIgs, released in 1986. The Apple IIe Platinum, released in 1987. And finally, the Apple IIc Plus, released in 1988. The Macintosh project was started in 1979 by a man named Jeff Raskin, but in 1981, him and Steve Jobs had a falling out. So, of course, Steve took over the project. The Macintosh was released in January of 1984 and had a price of $2,495. By May of 1984, Apple had hit their target for the number of Macintosh computers sold, 70,000 units. This was helped by the Super Bowl commercial that was aired to promote the Macintosh, but due to copyright laws, I cannot show the video, but I will leave a link to it in the description down below. Yes, they did. And of course, they were one of the best printers on the market. In total, Apple made 46 models of printers from 1979 to 1997. The longest running model of these printers was the ImageWriter 2 that ran from 1984 to 1996. Nothing else to say here, so let's move on. In 1983, Jobs made John Sculley the new CEO of Apple Computer. He persuaded Sculley to come to Apple from Pepsi by saying this: "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" In 1985, Jobs left Apple because he had two failed products: the Apple Lisa, which was $10,000, and the Macintosh, which was $2,495. Right before the launch of the Macintosh, Sculley ordered that the price be raised from $1,995 to $2,495 so Apple could make more profit. The sales of the Mac started to dwindle, and the Lisa just never sold well due to the absurd price of it. Sculley saw Jobs as a loose cannon, and one day asked the board of directors to choose between him or Steve. The board sided with Sculley, and Jobs was effectively fired from the company that he started. Without Steve to make any more overpriced products, the board of directors was free to design whatever they wanted. But without Steve, Apple almost went bankrupt in a period of 12 years, from 1985 when Jobs left to 1997 when he returned. In that 12-year period, Apple tried and tried and tried to make a successful product. They had a few, but they weren't that memorable. One of them was the Newton line of products, which, yes, was fairly successful / memorable to collectors, and they also introduced the Performa, Centris, and Quadra line of computers, which sold pretty well. Other than those lines of products, Apple didn't make many special products in those 12 years. Yes, they did make other lines of products, they just aren't remembered for being that high quality, because without Jobs being there, Apple's prices kept going higher and their quality has kept going down. They used cheaper plastics, and some machines had no screws and were only held together with plastic clips, which don't hold up well over time. I have first-hand experience with this issue on my Macintosh LC2, where some of the plastic clips would like to snap off and break it whenever I tried to take it apart and clean it. Apple also went through 3 CEOs in just 12 years: John Sculley, Michael Spindler, and Gil Amelio. Sculley left because Apple started failing. Spindler left because he was just a plain failure and was known for having panic attacks under his desk and not making the right decisions. Amelio left because he was voted out by the board of directors. Then finally, in 1997, Jobs returned to Apple as interim CEO. Starting in 1994, Apple began using the PowerPC line of CPUs from IBM and Motorola. They had amazing price to performance for the time and served as the heart of all Apple computers from 1994 to 2006. In 2005, Apple announced a switch to Intel CPUs because the PowerPC ones were starting to consume too much power and not deliver enough performance. The Intel CPUs could deliver 2 to 3 times the performance of the PowerPC ones while using less power as well. When Jobs was fired from Apple, he founded Next Computer Company on June 20, 1985. He developed a few products at this company, and none of them were that successful. Next was a short-lived company, but it is an important part in Apple history because when Apple bought out Next in 1996, they now had the rights to all the technology that Next had. So, in 1977... That's right. Steve returned to Apple as an advisor for Gil Amelio. Then in 1997, Amelio was fired from the company and Jobs took the helm of Apple yet again. When Jobs took over the company, they were 90 days from bankruptcy. To keep Apple afloat, they needed a savior. So in 1997, Microsoft agreed to invest $150 million in order to save Apple. This was a success, and if it were not for Microsoft giving Apple this money, they probably would have gone bankrupt in a few months. When Jobs returned, he killed most of Apple's product lines like the Newton, Quadra, Centris, and Performa lines, among others. About 1 year later, Apple introduced the iMac G3 to the world. It was a revolutionary product and was a major success. Then in 1999, Apple introduced the iBook G3, which was the first laptop ever with Wi-Fi capabilities. In 2001, Apple introduced the first iPod, which could hold up to 1,000 songs, which at the time was an insanely large amount of music. Throughout the years, Apple continued to innovate and announce new products like the iMac G4 that had a floating screen design and could be moved in any which way, the PowerMac G5, which is my personal favorite because of the case design in 2003, the iMac G5 in 2005 stands out because Apple still uses the same general design to this day, an aluminum base and the computer components stuffed behind the screen. But the product that stands out the most is the iPhone in 2007. This device revolutionized the phone industry and was a major hit. Not only was it revolutionary, but it was affordable-ish at only $499 for the 4GB model and $599 for the 8GB model. Finally, in 2010, Apple announced the iPad, which wasn't a hit at the beginning, but over time it began to rise in popularity. Then, on October 5th, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56 due to a rare form of pancreatic cancer. Press F to pay respects. 6 weeks before his death, Tim Cook was named the new CEO of Apple on August 24th, 2011. So, thank you guys so much for watching this pilot episode of Computing History. I hope you learned something because I certainly did. So don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.